she switched seats and moved. Now she said, no, I'm going to move this way, right? I zoomed it in. I did not, Alice. I left it where it was. Left it where it was. What's funny is if I start saying your name on these videos, you become famous. You know that, right? You know, like I have people, if you look at some of the comments on those videos, it'll be like, would somebody tell Monty to shut up? You know, like, it's not nice, you know? It was his class. He was asking questions. You know? Chapter 8, Agency Contracts. So these are the firm's employment contracts. Remember, we cannot be paid in any transaction unless we have what kind of an agreement? A written agreement. These agreements are the agreements that get the real estate firm paid. And the most basic one is called a listing agreement. A listing agreement is the basis for our business. As a matter of fact, I'm going to need to pass these out. Let's have my copies over here. I do not. Let me send these to the printer real quick. We don't need them right away, but we have them. You like those? I just got those off Amazon. Those are cool, aren't they? They were like $8. No, like $8. And that's 2 of them now, so that's like $16 for the 2 of them. But I thought they were super cool. Yep, they're really nice. Because I have a problem with, I always have this stuff printed, and then I try to leave it out in case somebody's not here and they need it the next time. But when you're running 3 classes at one time, it just ends up being this chaos of paper. So I found those on. You can find anything on Amazon. I spend more money on this. It's obscene. I need somebody else's credit card. Who wants to volunteer for my Amazon habit?
Is that where you bought the dog door? Dog door?
Somebody.
I'm sure it's your lead thing, Amazon have it.
Oh no! That's the problem. That Amazon app on my phone, it's not. It's just too easy. It's like you think of something. Oh, I wonder if I can find that. 30 seconds later, I bought it. Like, why did I do that? I do that all the time. And then stuff shows up and I forgot what it is. Like 2 days later, I can't even remember what I ordered. Like, so it's like Christmas. I go, oh, I got a present. No, you didn't. You paid for it, dummy. All right. So the listing agreement is the basis of our business. That's everything. If we didn't have listing agreements, there wouldn't be any real estate brokerage. Remember we said that in the beginning, every real estate broker and firm always represented who? Seller. The seller. And you can't represent a seller without a written listing agreement. You also can't represent a buyer, at least all the way to closing, without a written what? Buyer agency agreement. Here's the thing. The whole purpose of these agreements is to get the firm paid. Listing agreements do not benefit the seller. Who do they benefit? The firm. The seller would much prefer you didn't have a listing agreement because they don't want to do what? They don't want to pay you. But the firm needs one because the firm needs to say, you hired us to do a job and we have what? We've done it and you promised to pay us a commission, so pay up. That's the listing agreement. That's the purpose of it. Now, neither party can fire the other. These are contracts. When we have a contract between 2 parties, how do we terminate that contract? Well, we can either end it with what we were hired to do, which is sell the property, or what's the other way we could end that listing agreement? Mutual agreement. Both parties decide. Both parties. So if the seller all of a sudden decides that their listing firm's not doing a good job, can they just go hire another listing firm? Or do they have to ask to be released from that listing agreement? Which is it? They have to ask to be released. You have listed a property for sale and you find that you have the most ridiculous seller in the world. Can you just say, I am pulling my sign out of the ground, or do you have to ask them to release your firm from that listing agreement? You have to ask because you need mutual agreement. Yes, ma'am?
So I have a question. I think it's probably talking about now. I wondered if the rules changed. It was like 10, 12 years ago. I bought my first house. Well, I was trying to buy my first house. And the seller, I was under contract, and I went through inspection. It was like a farm. Kind of like, I don't even know. It's like, it was undeveloped. Now it is developed.
Okay.
But the seller decided not to sell, and we were under contract.
You were under contract with the seller as the buyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
They pulled out. I mean, it just made me think about this when I was looking at the YouTube. Like, how
Did you want to buy it?
Yeah, we went.
You could have.
Yeah, so
You could have sued them.
So no rules have changed since then.
Nope.
And I remember like the realtor saying, "Well, do you want to look at another house?" They decided not to because it was a family property.
So here's the thing, and here's what you need to ask yourself in a situation like that. What the heck would be the need of having a contract if somebody can just go, I changed my
I
mind?
know. I mean, I was thinking about that. Like, I wonder.
It's not a contract.
Yeah. So I wonder, how could that have occurred? And it was just so easy. Like, I don't know.
Because it shouldn't have.
Right.
What your real estate broker, if you had one, should have advised you is that you have the right to continue with this purchase, whether the seller wants you to or not. Now, would it have been an ugly rest of the way? Absolutely, because you would have to retain an attorney and file a lawsuit, but you would have won.
Does this happen? I mean, like, does that happen?
It does happen.
So then, when they tell, like, I was young, I was in my early 20s, so
Mhm.
they probably was just like, no, just like, oh, well, okay. You know, I
Right.
didn't know my rights.
You didn't, and apparently they didn't either.
Yeah, right. So I was just wondering, like, has the rules changed?
They have not.
It was odd.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just future.
You got bad
And
advice.
Yeah, now that makes sense. Now in the future, when I get that, just can't say, well, I'm sorry, they don't want to sell.
That's exactly right, because you have a contract with them and they have to honor that contract. Yes, sir, Jacob.
Just a quick question. Do you get awarded your attorney fees from the other person you have to pay for?
If you prevail, you are awarded your attorney fees. So like in her case, for example, if the seller just decides they're not going to sell after they're already under contract, then she could file a lawsuit. It's called a lawsuit for specific performance. That's what she would be suing for specific performance. And if and when she won that lawsuit, not only would she be awarded the right to buy the property according to the contract, she would be awarded whatever attorney's fees she had accumulated prosecuting that thing. And so it does get very expensive for a seller who tries to refuse to do that. Yeah, absolutely. We good so far? Okay. So when we talk about agency agreements, we have to talk about listing agreements. We also have to talk about buyer agency agreements. This is the other side of the coin. Remember, you can't get paid unless you have a written agency agreement of some type. Yes, ma'am, Marlon.
But I was thinking too, you said when it can terminate, it can expire too.
And expiration, absolutely. And I'm going to go through a full list. Yes, you're exactly right, Doug. Expiration. The big point I wanted to make is you can't just fire somebody under a listing agreement or a buyer agency agreement. So on the other side, with a buyer agency agreement, remember we talked about they could be oral for a limited amount of time. Do we have to put it in writing at some point?
Yes.
At what point? Before we do what with an offer? Present it to the other side of the transaction. Present it means give it to the other side. So before, if I represent this buyer, I have to have a written buyer agency agreement before I can send an offer to who? The seller or the seller's agent. Before I can send that offer to the other side. We can write it up, and I can tell the buyer, here's your offer, sign it. And they say, okay, when are you going to send it? What's my answer going to be? Right after you sign this buyer agency agreement, because I can't send it until you sign this buyer agency agreement. Can't get paid without one. Gotta have it. Every agency agreement should specify the amount of the compensation. And I mean all of the compensation. Is a bonus just a commission by another name? Yes. If you're being paid a bonus on a transaction, folks, that's a commission. So do you need to disclose that to your client? Absolutely. And the agency agreement is the place to do that. In fact, there is no other place to do it. Here's where you don't talk about your commission, your compensation, on the sales contract. Because the sales contract is an agreement between the buyer and who? The seller. It's got nothing to do with you. But the listing agreement has something to do with your firm. The buyer agency agreement has something to do with your firm. That's where you talk about your compensation. And that's where it should make clear how much you are charging this person. Because whether you're signing a listing agreement or a buyer agency agreement, it's all about how much you expect that client to pay your firm. Notice I said who's paying the firm? The client. Well, we understand that on the seller side, but how many of you understood that on the buyer side? It's true. The whole reason you sign a buyer agency agreement is to guarantee you get what? Paid. Who are you signing the buyer agency agreement with? The buyer. So who's guaranteeing you'll get paid? The buyer. Now, where are most buyer's agents paid? Where does the money usually come from? The listing firm shares their commission, right? And so the buyer agency agreement is usually going to say that. It's usually going to say, here's what we're going to charge you. Now we're going to try to get it from the listing firm first. But if we can't, you have to do what, Mr. Buyer? You have to pay. So would that be important information to give a buyer before you showed them the property? The list, by the way, the listing firm is not offering compensation to us on this transaction. Would that be something a buyer would need to know before they made an offer? Because what do they have to understand that means? That means if they make an offer on that property and they buy that property, not only do they have to pay the purchase price of the property, they also have to write a check for what? Our commission.
Does that happen often?
It does not happen often, because a few times I've had that come up in my career. When I had a buyer who wanted to look at a property, and the listing side was not offering any compensation, and I explained to my buyer, now the seller is not willing to pay a commission if you view this property, so if you buy it, you would have to pay the commission. You know what they look at me and say? I don't need to look at that one. I don't need to show me that one. And we move right along. That is what happens with a lot of for sale by owners. A lot of for sale by owners who refuse to pay any compensation. You go explain that to the buyer, and the buyer says, I don't need to see it. I don't need to see it. Yes, ma'am, Marla.
So the only way they can go that route, they got to really love property.
Yeah, right. They have to really love it and feel that they were getting it at a low enough price that it justified also paying the commission separate. Now, I have convinced people to change their mind about that, particularly in the case of a for sale by owner. Because I've contacted for sale by owners and said, listen, I have a buyer client who'd like to look at your property. Would you be willing to compensate my firm 2.5% of the sales price? And they say what?
Yes.
Oh, they say no initially. Of course, they always say no.
Right.
And I say, okay, I'll let my client know, and I'll get back in touch with you. And then I call my client, and I get back, and I explain to the client the situation, and what does the buyer say? Forget it, I don't want to look at it. So I call the seller back and I say, I told the buyer what you said. And they said they changed their mind about wanting to view your property. Would you like to reconsider your position on paying my firm's commission? What do you think the answer becomes all of a sudden?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll pay you.
Yes.
And here's the thing. I don't trust their word. Am I going to get that in writing before I show the property?
Yes.
You better believe it. You better believe it. And then I can go back to my buyer and say, okay, they've changed their mind. They've agreed to pay our commission. Would you like to see the property still? And of course the buyer probably would say, yes, I'd like to see it at that point. Because most buyers understand inherently that they're paying the commission anyway. They understand it's coming out of the purchase price. They would still rather it be paid that way rather than having to write a separate check. Because if it's rolled into the purchase price, aren't they borrowing it for the most part? If they're financing? Whereas if they have to write a check for it, it's just one big number on a check, and they don't want to do that. They would much rather it be rolled into the purchase price. Yes, ma'am.
Do you find a lot of for sale by owners who like keeping their property too long end up going to get an agent, or you could talk
Yes,
to
the vast majority of for sale by owners end up listing with a broker. Yeah, most of them do end up listing. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
For sale by, excuse me, like you said, if a for sale by owner agrees
Yep.
to pay the commission,
Yep.
and at the last minute says, no, I didn't agree to it,
Mm-hmm.
You have to get them to put it in writing?
Yes, I get them to put it in writing before I even show the property. In fact, there's a pre-printed form. If you decide to become a realtor, we're going to talk about the difference between a realtor and a non-realtor in a few minutes. Basically, it's your choice whether you join the Association of Realtors or not. You have to decide if you see a benefit to membership. You're not getting a license as a realtor. You're getting a license as a real estate broker. The realtors are an optional organization. They're a trade organization. They're a union. And you choose whether or not you want to join that union. And the reason you choose to join them is because you determine that there are benefits to being a member, right? Why do you join the gym? Because you want to do what? You want to go to the gym to work out. So you join the Association of Realtors because they got stuff you want to be able to use. Guess what the biggest example of that stuff you want to be able to use is? The MLS. They own the MLS. It belongs to them. So if you want to have access to the MLS, you have to join the Association of Realtors. The other big benefit of being a realtor, a member of the Association of Realtors, is that they provide for their membership contracts and forms that are already done by an attorney, ready to go, with cute little fill in the blanks so you can be off and running, rather than having to hire an attorney to draft all that stuff. Would that be expensive if you had to go out and hire an attorney to write a contract for you? Or you can join the Association of Realtors, who already has an army of attorneys on staff who write those forms for you. And one of the forms that the Association of Realtors provides is something called an unrepresented seller agreement. So the seller is what? Unrepresented, meaning you probably represent who? The buyer. And here's what it says. Dear seller, you have your property for sale. We have a client who's interested in looking at your property. You've agreed to compensate us blank % of the sales price if our buyer purchases your home. You fill in the number, you fill in the buyer's name, you fill in the date of the showing, you sign it, and you send it to the seller, and you have them do what? Sign it before you show the property. And so now they've agreed to compensate your firm if that buyer buys the property. Does that make sense for everybody?
So,
Yes, ma'am.
so at this point, when they sign that paper, is that still considered a listing agreement?
That is not a listing agreement because you're not listing the property. A listing agreement would be if you were doing what with the seller? Representing them, and you're not. Who are you representing? The buyer. So all it is a compensation agreement. It's saying, I recognize that you don't represent me, but I'm still going to pay you because I want you to bring me this buyer. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay. That's how you would handle that. Now, when we talk about agency agreements, if this is the document that gets us paid, it should specify under what conditions we are to get paid. Now, this is going to be an important note, and it's a hard one to wrap your brain around initially. I'm going to try to put it in terms you might understand. Do you, when you work an hourly job, and you get paid by the hour, do you get paid at the instant you have earned that pay, or do you earn the pay significantly before you actually get the money? You earn it significantly before you actually see the money. Does that make sense? The same thing is true of a listing agreement or a buyer agency agreement. When do we usually get paid? When what happens? At closing, when that deed is recorded. But that is not when we've earned the money. That is not when the listing firm has earned the money. Because the listing agreement is not going to say you've earned a commission when you close on the property. Here's the language the listing agreement uses. It says the listing firm has earned the commission when the firm produces a ready, willing, and able buyer. Now, Patrice, can I go back to your example earlier? I'm going to revisit yours because I think this is a perfect time to point out that not only did that seller screw you, Patrice's seller also screwed a listing firm somewhere along the way, did they not? Did the listing firm produce a ready, were you ready to buy that property? Were you willing to buy that property? And were you able to buy that property? Had the listing firm done their job? Under that listing agreement. So were they owed that commission? So not only could Patrice have sued the seller to try to force the seller to sell the property to her, could the listing firm have sued the seller for their commission? Are you with me on that? I'm going to take you one step deeper. Did Patrice's buyer's firm do their job? Now we know they sucked at it because they didn't give her good advice, but I'm not talking about that. But when she signed that buyer agency agreement, they agreed to help her do what? Find a property to purchase. Did they do that? Yes. Were they also owed a commission?
Yes.
And who were they most likely owed it by?
Seller.
Not the seller, because it doesn't come directly from the seller. Who does it come from? The listing firm. So there could have been lawsuits flying all over the place, because Patrice could have sued the seller. The listing firm could have sued the seller. Patrice's buyer firm, or selling firm, could have sued who? The listing firm for their commission. All because the seller did what? Backed out, walked away when they didn't have the right to do so. Does that make sense? Because the truth is, the seller's the only one who didn't do their job. Was the buyer doing their job? She was ready, willing, and able. Had the listing firm done their job? Had the selling firm done their job? Does that make sense? So everybody was actually entitled to that commission, even though it never closed. Are you following me on that? Okay? Yes, ma'am, Jocelyn. I see all three of you. Okay.
Do you think they probably collected their commission?
No. No. This is it is very rare that a firm would actually go after a client for an earned commission that was not paid because the transaction didn't close. Because remember, the firm would have to sue that client to get it. And most firms don't want to take on the baggage, because it's not the individual broker who would be suing, it would have to be who? The firm, because it's the firm who has the agency agreement with the client. And most firms don't want to take on that baggage of being known as the firm who sues their clients. Does it happen occasionally? Yes, particularly in commercial real estate. In commercial real estate, this is a very common lawsuit. Because in commercial real estate, here's what happens. In commercial real estate, the building is owned by some LLC, some shell corporation. They create an LLC, and the only asset the LLC has is the building. They hire a listing firm. The listing firm finds a buyer. They go under contract. It closes. But at closing, the seller says, "Don't pay my firm." They tell the closing attorney, "Don't pay my firm." What's the closing attorney going to do? They're not going to pay them. It's the seller's money. They're not going to pay them. And the closing attorney's going to go, "You know they can sue you." And you know what the seller says? "That's okay. That's okay." Because who would they be suing? The LLC. How many assets does the LLC have? None. Happens all the time in commercial real estate.
Oh, that's dirty.
That's a dirty world. That's a dirty world right there.
It's gonna be turned around.
Yeah, you change your mind, right?
I know.
Change your mind. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was just reading the ready, willing, and able.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, you produce a buyer, ready to buy the property, willing to buy it. Now, the ability or able, would that fall under the category of, do they have their financing? Because
Absolutely.
if there's no financing in place,
They're not able.
then it's not able.
That's right.
That is a little.
So in order to make that claim, you have to be able to definitively prove that the buyer is all three. They are ready, they are willing, and they are able. So to make that claim, you would have to say, here's their financing, here's their loan commitment letter, here, or the better, the slam dunk would be somebody who's paying what? Cash. Here's the cash. They were ready to write the check. Seller backed out. They owe us a commission. That would be making that claim for ready, willing, and able. Is everybody following me on that? Yeah. She's shaking her head. Can you go back over there? You need to talk to.
Is there
You need to-
statute of limitations on 442 became like boom and
Right.
it was in the beginning.
You need to go find Doc Brown and get him the DeLorean and go back, right? You know. So. Okay. We good? We understand this idea? So keep in mind that entitlement to a commission and when you actually get it are two separate times. Entitlement means you've earned it based on producing a ready, willing, and able buyer. They have to be all three, ready, willing, and able. All agency agreements, whether they're listing agreements or buyer agency agreements, have to have an expiration date. They cannot be open-ended. An open-ended agreement would be one where there was no expiration date. It never ends. That's not allowed in North Carolina. Agency agreements in North Carolina must have an expiration date. There's no rule about how long that can be. Could they be 99 years if you wanted them to be? Sure, as long as you put a real date as far as the expiration date goes. There is no limitation on the amount of time. Every agency agreement and all of this is fodder for test, by the way. All of these rules that come from the... Because here's the thing. The Real Estate Commission does not publish any forms for you to use. It's not their job to make your life easier. It's actually their job to make your life harder. Because they regulate you. So they don't publish these forms. What they publish are the rules that the forms have to follow. So these are the rules that come from the Real Estate Commission. The Real Estate Commission says, we don't care what your agency agreement says as long as it has what? An expiration date. As long as it has a what? A non-discrimination clause. It has to have some statement that says the broker will not discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, or handicapping status. You don't have to memorize those yet, but you will eventually have to memorize them when we get to the fair housing chapter, because those are the 7 protected classes for fair housing. Okay? So, and I do not want to open up an hour-long can of worms about fair housing. We will have these discussions at length later, but I want to plant this seed in your mind. The word discrimination does not mean what you think it means. See, right now you think discrimination means you can't do anything bad as it relates to those protected classes. What I'm telling you is those 7 topics, if you're involved in a, because these are fair housing, so it only applies to residential real estate, okay? If you're in a residential transaction, those 7 topics are off the table. You cannot discuss them, because that is defined as discrimination. Client comes up to you and says, you know, we really would love to live in a neighborhood with other Asian families. Are there any Asian families that live in this neighborhood? You cannot engage that question. You cannot. See, that doesn't sound like discrimination, does it? It actually sounds rather nice, doesn't it? Because they want to be around that group of people. But that group of people is a protected class, right? It falls under what? National origin. So you can't answer that question. You cannot assist with that. They can do what they want to do as a buyer. They make their decision for whatever reason they want to make their decision, but you can't assist them in that regard. You have to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. And by the way, and I hesitate to say this because I really don't want to open an hour-long fair housing discussion. This one right here does not mean what you think it means. Familial status means children. What did I say about these protected classes? They're what? Off limits. You cannot even talk about them. Now, imagine yourself in a residential real estate transaction where you can't talk about what?
Children.
Children. That's the law. You got to figure out how to make that work. Because is your client going to say something about children?
Yes.
You better believe it. How many kids are there in this neighborhood? Is this a good neighborhood for kids? Are there a lot of kids that live out here? How far do my kids have to walk to go to school? Kids. Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't there the story that you had said about was it the Realtors Association?
Realtor.
Oh, I did it again. I've been practicing all weekend. I said you weren't going to catch me. The Realtor Association, y'all stop. And somebody went up to the lady and, oh, can you talk about?
I don't know what the rest of, I'm nodding because I'm understanding you, but I don't know what the rest of this is.
Well, it was, they were asking her about the area and about are there any kids in this area? And she said something about, why don't you come by, like when the bus comes by? And it was them that was testing her. Like,
Oh, they were test shopping her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do. There are fair housing test shoppers who will test you to see if you will engage in these conversations. If somebody asks you if it's a good neighborhood for kids, my response is, well, first of all, I can't answer that question, crazy as that sounds. Federal law says I can't answer that question. Here's the thing, I want you to buy whatever you're comfortable with. You tell me what you're looking for in a neighborhood specifically, and I will help you find it. Because I don't care that they want a good neighborhood for kids. That's their right. It's their kids and their house. Does that make sense? What I can't do is make the decision for them about what is a good neighborhood for kids. Because essentially, if they ask me the question, is this a good neighborhood for kids? They're asking me to apply my definition of a good neighborhood for kids. Does that make sense for everybody? I told the day class last week, I said, I don't know what's a good neighborhood for kids. They're your kids, not mine. I wasn't there for the fun part. I sure as hell don't want to be here for the hard part now. They're yours. You decide what is a good neighborhood for them. That's the way you look at it. So when somebody puts you in a corner and they ask you one of these questions, you turn it back on them. Could they ask me, well, is it close to a school? Can I answer that question?
Yeah.
Of course I can. Yes, there's a school right across the street. Well, is there a playground in the neighborhood? Can I answer that question? Of course I can, because now what they're doing is they're deciding what's a good neighborhood for their kids, and they're simply asking me about the statistics of the property. You see the difference there? What I have to do is redirect that. Well, what the Real Estate Commission says is your agency agreement has to remind your clients that you're not allowed to talk about these things. So when we look at a buyer agency agreement or a listing agreement, you're going to see that that statement is going to be in there because it's required by law in North Carolina to be in there. Real estate brokers always have to honor those 7 protected classes in North Carolina. And then this last one, they like to throw this in there on a test as well. It says all agency agreements should identify the individual broker who's signing the agreement on behalf of the firm and their license number. Once you get a real estate license, from that point forward, everything you put your name on, you're going to put your license number on. Like that working with real estate agents brochure, there's a place on there for you to put the name of the broker who's working with this person. What else are you going to put on there? Your license number. Here's why the Real Estate Commission says you have to do that. It's faster for them to look it up when you're in trouble. When they get that form, because you might change your name, right? You might get married, you might get divorced, you might just do a name change, but that license number never changes. Yes, ma'am.
Are these only for brokers to follow? I mean, anyone that deals with housing, should they be following these as well?
These are for real estate brokers. These rules are for real estate brokers. These are North Carolina Real Estate Commission rules, so they are for licensees.
Okay.
Which would include provisional and non-provisional brokers. There's no differentiation here.
But if you're not a broker and if you're dealing with housing, then you don't have to necessarily.
You don't have to follow these rules because these rules come from the North Carolina Real Estate Commission.
Okay.
And remember, these rules would only apply to real estate brokers anyway because these are for agency agreements. It would only be real estate brokers who would have agency agreements. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay? Solicitation is a big deal in our business. Now, I will tell you, since I printed these slides, I've made a few adjustments. What you're going to find is that you actually have the information that's split on the next 2 slides on one slide there. I didn't add any information here, I just made it into 2 slides so it's a little bit easier to see. So don't freak out when you don't have this one in your packet. You have the information, it's just all on one slide. We all okay? I don't want to see any hyperventilation out there. Alright? So, laws that affect solicitation. Solicitation means trying to get what? Business. You are trying to cultivate business. You're trying to get business from people. You want them to hire your firm to represent them? Well, there are lots of ways that you can reach out to people, and almost all of them are regulated by the federal government. The single most regulated, and the one you are most likely to get a test question about, is the National Do Not Call Registry. The National Do Not Call Registry. What is the point of the Do Not Call Registry? The people can put themselves on a list and what? Not get solicitation calls. That's the purpose of the list. So, if the purpose of your phone call is what? Solicitation, and they're on this list, then you can't call. Is everybody following me on that? So what does that mean you have an obligation to do before you call? Check to see if they're on the list. Does that make sense for everybody? If they're not on the list, can you call all you want? Yes, you can. Here's why you need to check. There's a slight fine involved with breaking the Do Not Call Registry. It's $10,000 per call. So you don't want to break the Do Not Call Registry rules. Does that make sense for everybody? So before you pick up the phone, do what?
Check the list.
Check the list. Now, here's what you really need to know and where your test question is going to come from. Even if they're on that list, there are 3 unique situations where you can still call them, even if they're on the list. That makes sense for everybody? You can still call them even if they're on the list. And these are very nitpicky, so you need to really study them and really understand them. The first one, somebody has their house listed for sale by owner. They have put a sign in the front yard, it says for sale by owner, and what's on the sign? Their phone number. That is an invitation to do what?
Call.
To call them. But here's the thing, you ain't done yet. It's not an invitation to call for any reason. It's only an invitation to call if you have what?
A buyer.
A buyer who's interested in that property. Can you call them and say, hey, by the way, I saw your sign out there and I'd love to talk to you about listing your property for sale? No. Can you call them and say, hey, Marla, I saw the sign out in your front yard. I have a buyer who'd be really interested in your property. Can I bring them by and show them that property? Is that an okay call?
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh, by the way, I'm going to bring you some comps so that you can look at, in case my buyer's not interested, I'd love to talk to you about selling your house. Can I do that? No, I cannot change the subject over to soliciting that person's business. I can only contact them if I have an interested buyer client. Everybody okay with that? That's the first exception. So remember, it's an exception to somebody who's on the Do Not Call Registry and you want to do what? Call them anyway. Yes, ma'am, Michelle.
Unless they start asking you questions about.
Can they change the subject? Is what you're saying? Can they change the subject to listen to property? Yes, they absolutely can. If Marlo says, well, listen, while I got you on the phone, how much would you charge to sell my house? Can I engage the conversation then? Yes, because that's coming from her end. I can't change the conversation, but she certainly could. It's a good question. Okay? That's the first exception. The second exception to somebody that I can call, even though they are on the registry, is going to be somebody who gives me permission to call them with some kind of an information request. They went on my website and they filled out some little form where it said contact us. And what did they put on that form? Their phone number. They went to an open house, and we're slick like this sometimes. You ever been to an open house and we say, oh, well, for security purposes, we ask everybody to sign in on the register over there. You ever been to one of those? And what do we ask you for on that line over there? The phone number. You just gave us your permission to do what?
Call.
To call you. But that permission is for a limited amount of time. 90 days. 3 months, 90 days. That permission is only good for 90 days from the time they fill out that form. So here's the net of it. If somebody comes to your open house on Sunday, fills out the form, puts their phone number on there, and you want to call them on Tuesday, do you even need to check to see if they're on the Do Not Call Registry?
No.
No, because even if they are, you still have the right to do what? To call them. If it's been 4 months and you want to call them, you need to do what? Check. Because if they're on the list, you can't call. If they're not on the list, can you still use that phone number at that point in time?
Yeah.
Sure, because there's no restriction against calling them if they're not on the list. Does that make sense for everybody? These exceptions only apply to people who are on the list. If they're not on the list, you can call them anytime.
Is it as easy to check that list as it is to put your name on it?
It is. You go to donotcall.gov and it is very easy to search the list. Yep. Yes, sir.
I hope this isn't a dumb question, I'm gonna ask it anyway, because that's just how I am. Let's say I don't like jump call on my own, I wanna be on the Do Not Call Registry.
Yep.
Meanwhile, I wanna have clients that will call me, potential clients, can they call me?
Yes, because they're not soliciting you. The Do Not Call Registry only covers solicitation phone calls. It does not cover, that's not solicitation. They're calling you and you have put yourself out there. Because think about it, if you're a real estate broker, you put your phone number out there on your business card, on your sign, and you've given them an invitation to call, right? So even if, but who would it keep from calling you? Solicitors. So think about this. If you're a real estate broker, everybody in the world's got something they want to sell you. Zillow will call you 27 times a day trying to sell you clicks off of their website. You know, all the times you click on there to get information about this property, folks, you are not getting that information from the listing broker. That click is not going to the listing broker. That click is going to some real estate broker who just paid Zillow $75 for that click.
That's why you
One
put
click.
a bogus phone number.
Click, $75. Click, $75. How many of those do you think pan out?
Not that many.
On average, about 1 out of 50. And you're paying $75 for every single one of them. Called buying leads. That's what, how do you think Zillow makes their money? Where it comes from? Comes from us. Yes, ma'am.
Zillow brokers that pay those $75, like,
Yep.
there's a lot of the long-term realtors association,
Sure they are.
but those are terrible odds.
Those are terrible odds. They're better than 0 odds, though. So you have to remember, you're in a business that's all about generating business, right? Some people are terrified of approaching people. I'll sell anything to anybody. Shocker, right? I mean, you can't see that in my personality at all. I have real estate conversations with everybody all day long. I do it just as a challenge to myself, just to see if I can, what I can get to. If I'm standing in line at the grocery store, and I see somebody standing in front of me, waiting in line, I'll help them pick up something off the cart and put it on the thing. Because they're going to say what? They're going to say, thank you. No problem, no problem. How's your day going today? And they'll say, oh, it's okay, it's okay. And I'll say, just getting off work? Yeah, headed home. So, yeah, I'm in between showings. It is so crazy right now. Yeah, I'm not in between showings. That's the biggest lie on earth. I'm teaching class all day long, you know. I'm in between showings right now. It's the craziest market. I went out and showed 5 houses today. They all just came on the market, and every single one of them's already under contract. About to pull my hair out. I'm telling you, I don't care who that person is right there. They want to have a conversation with you. Because you have just peeked. If somebody said that to you in line at the grocery store, you'd be like, damn, I didn't know it was that, wouldn't you? You'd want to have a conversation with that person. And I'm telling you, they'll tell you everything about this. Yeah, you know, we've been thinking about selling our house too because we know what we can get a big number for it. Well, gosh, you know, if you're thinking about selling it, I got buyers all over the place. I'd love to talk to you about listing it. Boom, right there.
So lie.
Got a listing. Right? You better have the working with real estate agent brochure with you. But here's the thing. Some people are petrified to reach out like that. And so they would rather buy leads off of Zillow because they feel like it's safe. You know, they feel like the person who clicked for information wants them to do what? They want them to call. And so they would rather pay the $75. I've never been one to buy leads because I feel like I can generate my own leads. But that's going to be a decision y'all have to make on your own about what you're good at, what you're not good at. Okay, yes, ma'am, Molly.
Plus, once you, when you get started, if you're not that good, this will give you experience.
It would.
And
Just the
it's a
experience of
write-off.
talking to people. That's exactly
It's a
right.
write-off.
Just the experience to know what questions they're going to ask. You know, that sort of thing. Third exception. I said there were three, right? What was the first one? For sale by owner. Don't just say for sale by owner because that's going to throw you on the test. It's not for sale by owner and you have what? You have a buyer that's interested. It's not any for sale by owner. It's a for sale by owner and you have an interested buyer. What's the second exception?
If someone.
Somebody gave you permission. They filled out some kind of an information form and said, please call me because they put their phone number on it. And how long is that permission good for?
90 days.
90 days, 3 months. The last one is they were your client. You actually represented them in a transaction. They were a buyer client, they were a seller client, they were a landlord client, they were a tenant client. You had some type of agency relationship with this person. That gives you permission to contact them for up to 18 months after the transaction closes. So that's by far the biggest one, right? You got 18 months afterward. Yes, ma'am.
So do they have like some type of program where people buy houses and got your email and it just automatically stops after 18 months, or do they have to?
No, you can set up there. You know, there are all kinds of contact management software, CMS systems, which allow you to essentially go in there and it keeps track of whatever date you put them into the system, and so you can set it up with alarms, like when you hit the 90-day window, when you hit the 18-month window, so that you don't violate the law. Yeah, there are all kinds of systems that automate that for you. Okay, is everybody good with that? And keep in mind, there's no rule about what's another good thing. If you're going to ask them for their phone number, what should you also ask them for? Their email address, because there's no law that says you got certain reasons and time periods to contact them for email purposes. Does that make sense? So that's going to be a better long-term follow-up method because it's not as regulated. Now, speaking of email, it does have regulation. It's called the Can-Spam Act. The Can-Spam Act. The Can-Spam Act is not nearly as strict as the National Do Not Call Registry. The National Do Not Call Registry says you have to check. It's your job to check to see if they're on the list. See, there is no list for the Can-Spam Act. What it says is you can send as many emails out as you want to as long as you include one thing on that email. The ability for them to what? Opt out or unsubscribe from that list. That as long as you have given them the ability to unsubscribe from that list, take themselves off the mailing list, then you are in compliance. That's the only thing you need to know about the Can-Spam Act. The only thing to know about the Junk Fax Act is that there's a law about faxing. You'll never have to deal with it because obviously nobody uses fax machines anymore. But here's the type of question they might ask you. Which of the following is the only method of communication not regulated by federal regulations? What's it going to be without me even naming something off? What method of communication have we not said anything about? The U.S. Postal Service. You send as much junk as you want to through the U.S. Postal Service, and there's anything anybody can do about it because there's no regulations about it. Putting flyers on their mailboxes is a felony. There you go. And here's the reason. The mailbox doesn't belong to them. Look at the outside of the mailbox. What does it say printed on the box? Even if you paid for it, what does it say? In addition to U.S. Mail, it says, property of the Postmaster General. Even though you bought the mailbox and you paid for putting it up, it says property of the Postmaster General. That's how they get you. Did you know technically it is a felony to take mail out of your own mailbox when you put it in there and put the flag up?
Because it don't belong.
If you put it in there and you put that flag up, it does not belong to you any longer. It is property of the United States Postal Service from the moment you put it in that box and throw that flag up.
I'm going to jail.
And if you take it out, it's technically a felony. Mail fraud. Because you're supposed to view that box as no different than the blue box on the corner. Can you reach in the blue box and take it out once you drop it in there? It's supposed to be the same thing. Supposed to be the same thing.
But that would never be,
Oh, God, I can't imagine anybody enforcing that, but I'm just pointing out to you how regulated that box actually is, because it's a good thing. It's a great question Jocelyn had, because a lot of real estate brokers want to ride around the neighborhood and put out flyers, and the first place they stick them is on the mailbox. Don't do that.
put them on the
Stick it on the
doorknob
post.
or the doorknob?
Put it on the doorknob, put it on the house, put it on the ground, put a rock on top of it, you know? But don't put it on the mailbox. And definitely don't put it in the mailbox, because you will get turned in for that. And it's going to be the mailman that turns you in, because when they go around, they start opening all those boxes to put mail in that day, and all those flyers are in that box. They're going to take it back to their supervisor at the mail sorting facility, and you're going to be getting a nasty call from somebody at the Postal Service.
So all the flyers that I get in my mailbox, like from real estate agents or whatever, oh, you know
They've
what?
been mailed to
They've been
you.
mailed.
Which is exactly why they don't want you to do it the other way, because you're taking money away from them. They highly encourage you to mail them. They would love for you to mail them. They would love to put them in the box for you. They just don't want you to put it in the box. Yes, ma'am.
That's what I was about to say. You said advertising through them, unlimited.
That's right.
They don't care.
They don't care how much you want to spend, you know? In fact, you can go right up by the airport, up on 70. They got the mail sorting facility up there, and you can do all the bulk mail you want to out of that place. So you take in just buckets of it, and they send it out you get a discount. But you got to sort it by zip code. It's a pain in the rear end. Bulk mail is a pain.
But you gonna pay.
Oh yeah, you're gonna pay. You're gonna pay.
Real quick, so if you were to mail to, sold by seller and, what is it called, when the.
First sale by owner?
First sale by owners, can you mail them?
You can mail them anything you want to.
Yeah.
You can mail anything you want to. Yes, we would love to list your property, because there's no regulations affecting the mail.
Yeah.
The regulations affect what? Telephone calls and emails. Okay? It's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
This is asking, but, you said you could put it on the post, you said if you went to neighborhood with like little pins. and put
You
it
pinned it on the wood of the post, that's not the box. You're fine. It's the actual box that belongs to the Postal Service.
And the customer themselves can complain against
They
that.
can't. They can't. I mean, they might call and complain and say you're leaving trash on their yard or something like that. They might, but as far as like, they haven't broken any laws by doing that.
Good to know.
Especially if it's in like a neighborhood that has the little, some neighborhoods have that little box underneath the mailbox for like, that are made for flyers and stuff. You're more than welcome to stick something in there, because that's not controlled by the Postal Service. But don't put it in the mailbox. Don't put it in the mailbox. The check might be in the mail, but the solicitation better not be. Okay? All right? This slide is one that I think throws people for loops sometimes. But it makes sense if you look at it from the Real Estate Commission's perspective. The Real Estate Commission will allow you to pay a referral fee to somebody who does not have a real estate license in North Carolina. As a North Carolina broker, you can pay a referral fee to an out-of-state person, as long as that person has what? A license in some other state. As long as they're licensed in whatever state they are currently residing in, then you can pay them a referral fee. So this would be, for example, let's say you get a phone call from a broker in Virginia who has a sister that's moving here to Raleigh. And they want to refer their sister to you, for you to represent and help them find a house. Can you pay that broker in Virginia a referral fee?
Yes.
Yes, as long as you verify they have a license in good standing in Virginia, you most certainly can agree to pay that broker a referral fee. Here's the thing. What state are they licensed in? Virginia. What state are they giving you the referral from? In other words, where are they when they contacted you? In Virginia. Matches up, right? Same place they got a license, right? Where are they going to be when you pay them the referral fee? In Virginia. Where had their rear end better stay if they want to get paid that referral fee? in Virginia. Where had they better not come?
North Carolina.
North Carolina, because if they want to get paid that referral fee and they come into this state, they must have a North Carolina license. And I don't care why they're coming into the state. If they're changing planes at Charlotte Douglas International, that's in this state. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, I was confused on this, YouTube, so why? What if they have a house or they had something, I mean, but we don't know they're here. I mean, but they.
And that's why it's impossible to police.
Yeah.
Stop worrying about policing it. Worrying about understanding the rules. So, to be in compliance with the rule, what should you tell an out-of-state broker from the moment they give you a referral? Don't come here. Don't come here. From this point forward, until this transaction closes and I write you the check, you can't come to North Carolina. Well, but I'm going to the Outer Banks next week for vacation. Well, then I can't pay you. Becomes that simple. Because if they come into the boundaries of this state while that referral fee is going on, and you know about it, you cannot pay them. And realistically, the Real Estate Commission is not worried about the ones who drive through here going to south of the border to buy fireworks. They're not worried about that. What they're worried about are the ones who actually come into the state and actually try to help with the transactions without having a North Carolina license. Because that's exactly what's going to happen. This woman who's referring you her sister from Virginia, she wants to refer you the sister, and then you show up to show the properties in Raleigh, and guess who rode in the damn car with her down here?
The sister.
The sister. And you're supposed to be showing the property, and the broker from Virginia is going to be giving all the advice and all the, because it's their sister. Does that make sense? That's what this law is there to prevent. You just say to this person, I'm happy to pay you a referral fee, but you cannot come into North Carolina until the transaction is what? Closed. Simple as that. Yes, ma'am.
Just wanted to make sure I understand. So what if, like, someone lives really close between two state lines? So they just have to have two realtor licenses?
There's no such thing as a realtor, number one. It's a realtor.
I tried hard.
Number two, there's no such thing as a realtor license, because realtors is just a trade organization. There are real estate licenses, right? I have to separate them because they do that on a test. They jumble all those words up on a test. So if somebody is close on the border, it's going to be very sensible for them to have both licenses, because it's going to be very hard for that person to not enter North Carolina if they're right. I mean, imagine somebody lives in Fort Mill, South Carolina, has a South Carolina real estate license, and refers a transaction to somebody in North Carolina. And then they want to go to a Panthers game, which is where? In North Carolina. They can't go. They can't cross that line while that referral's going on. Now, stop trying to play in your mind, I'm not going to the Panthers game to see if I can catch them. No, nobody's saying that. You're not the police force of this. What we're saying is it is your responsibility to tell them in writing, so you've got a record of it, that they can't what? That they can't come here if they want to get paid. And if you do see them here, what is your responsibility? Don't pay them. Don't pay them. Yes, ma'am, Michelle.
Okay, so I'm trying to think there should be exceptions to every rule. So with that said, if Millie Mae we'll use her example, done gone on to glory, and you have to come to the funeral, still.
I don't care.
You can't, okay, good. I was trying.
If you want, you gotta make a choice. You gotta make a choice. Go to the funeral or get paid. Or what's option number 3? Get a license where? In North Carolina. That's door number 3. Because here's the thing. How does the Real Estate Commission fund itself? License fees. What are they trying to make the rule so that you have to do what? Get a North Carolina license. That's the whole damn point of the rule, is they want that person to get it, because they want, when you explain that to somebody, to go, well, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. And so then you can say to them, well, you got a license in Tennessee, all you gotta do is pay $100 and you'll have a license here in North Carolina, because that's what the Real Estate Commission wants them to do, because that's the most sensible thing for them to do, is write the stupid check. Well, you can't write a check, you gotta pay it with a credit card. Pay a credit card to the Real Estate Commission for $100 and get the North Carolina license, and then can they come here all they want to during that referral? Yes.
You don't even have to take the test anymore.
They don't have to take the test, all they gotta do is pay the $100.
Oh, man.
That's it.
Is that for every state?
Is it reciprocity, certain states take it from Joan, or does it?
Yeah, certain being all 50.
I know my license, I can't. There are certain states I can't, there's no reciprocity.
That's state by state rules. So our license is not necessarily good in all 50. You have to contact the state you want to go into. But all 50 states' licenses work here to get a North Carolina license at this point, as of July 1. Mm-hmm.
Because, North Carolina Real Estate Commission says that brokers and the commission would have to have, broker's license here in North Carolina.
That's right, because you're collecting a commission for a transaction that's happening where?
Here.
Here, and where are you? Here, so you need a license here. That's the thing. That's the whole reason. That's the rule.
So Travis, theoretically, if someone didn't pass the test, then all they have to do is go online and take the exam in another state, get the license, and then pay the $100 fee here, and boom, you got it.
There you go.
Thank y'all. Travis didn't say anything.
By the way,
thank
I'm
y'all.
sending that video to the Real Estate Commission. And not because you said anything wrong, but because that's exactly the argument I made against that stupid ass rule change when they changed it. And that's exactly what I said down there when I was talking to them about it, about this is the dumbest rule change I've ever seen. And see, here's the thing. If you figured it out as a pre-licensing student sitting there, how long is it going to take till everybody figures it out? That all you got to do, because we're in the hardest state in the country to get a real estate license, is go to Florida, where they will give it to you just because you got a pulse. By comparison, I'm not trying to go, but I'm just saying, by comparison, it's just that much easier to get one there.
Wow. That's not right.
And then you pay the $100 and you got one here.
Which is actually cheaper than the actual fee for us to go take the test also.
No, not necessarily. You would have to pay to take the class in Florida, and you would have to go through their licensing process. So you still won't spend the money, but it's just a much easier process.
But how much is it for us to take the exam for the state once we go on isn't that like $150 or something?
$160.
So they can just come take it for $100.
No, they're not taking the exam. They're not taking the exam. They're just paying $100. But they paid in whatever state they were in.
So it offsets it. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
So this just happened July, because I know someone who moved from like Philadelphia, and she had to pay,
She had to take the state portion of the exam. That was the old rule. That was the old rule. As of July 1, new rule. Horrible rule. I understand why they did it. I know the motivation. I appreciate the motivation. I think it's the wrong motivation. The motivation was that they were concerned that out-of-state brokers could come in. The old rule said this. If you came in, you had a license in another state, you took the state exam here, you passed the state exam here, you would be issued a North Carolina license on a status that mirrored the status you had in your other state. So, for example, if you were a full broker in Texas, and you came here and took the North Carolina exam, as soon as you passed the exam, you weren't issued a provisional broker's license, you were issued a non-provisional broker's license, and you could immediately declare yourself a broker in charge because you could use your experience in the other state to meet the experience requirement. So in essence, you could have somebody who came in here, has never done a transaction in North Carolina, and immediately declare themselves a what? A bid. I get it, that's a fear, right? And so the solution was just give them the license, but give it to them as a provisional broker's license, which means they have to do what? they have to take the 90 hours of post-licensing. It was the only way they could guarantee that people had to take 90 hours of post-licensing. I get it, I really do. I get that concern. But my bigger concern is for y'all, because I don't think it's fair to y'all. It's not fair. It's not. It's not fair to y'all. It's because we torture you in this class. I mean, I know what it is. I mean, I know how hard it is. I see how easy it is in other states by comparison to this one, and I hate it for y'all. It kills me. They have undermined their own standards. Because it's actually not even, there's two different standards. We're holding people who are residents of the state to a much higher standard than people who are residents of other states. And I think it's a terribly unfair thing. I hate it. And I will continually lobby to change it. I have been a staunch advocate of not doing it. And every time I go, y'all probably hear me say it when I go over there. If you go over there with me on Wednesday, they won't call on me in the meeting, but if you hear me talking to them to the side, you'll probably hear me say, this is a mistake. I said it was a mistake before. I say it's a mistake now. Y'all pass this rule. You can unpass it.
It's all about money.
Well, the cynical side of me says it's about money too. I mean, I wish I could say that I don't feel that way to some extent, but obviously money is a concern. They want licensing fees. I do think they had a real concern. I think they fixed the wrong rule. They could have changed the broker in charge rule. They could have simply said, the broker in charge rule requires 2 years of active full-time experience in North Carolina, rather than just 2 years of active full-time experience. Because what that would have prevented, yeah, that person could come in here and get a full broker's license, but they still would have had to hang it with where? With a North Carolina firm for at least 2 years to get the North Carolina experience, and then they could declare themselves a broker in charge. I think that was the rule that needed to be changed. So. No, they can change it now. They can propose rule changes every year. So it could theoretically be undone by July 1 of next year. They all go into effect on July 1.
But Travis, with them having to take the extra classes anyway, they're still going through everything that we are going through now, right? They just won't be tested on it, is that correct?
Well, they're not going through the pre-licensing class, and they're not going through the exam. They're just going through the post-license.
Yeah, and the post-license is a lot of what we do right now.
The post-licensing, and they're going to struggle in post-licensing, bluntly. They're really going to struggle in post-licensing.
Most brokers are not going to stay provisional because it's less money.
Right. They want to get rid of the provisional status. Yeah. So, and that's why I say I can understand the motivation. The thought process is, well, they have to take at least 90 hours of classes now, so they should learn something in theory during those 90 hours. But for me, it's not even about them, it's about y'all. I think it's unfair to y'all. I think you all are put through the ringer with trying to get a license the right way in this state. I always have a problem with when they incentivize the wrong behavior. And I think what we're doing is incentivizing the wrong behavior, because what you're going to have is people that fail this class be like, heck with that, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go get the license in Florida or Utah or North Dakota or whatever it happens to be, and do it online. And then as soon as I get that license, and they may have to travel to that state to take the exam. But, Florida ain't that far away, right? You go down there for the weekend, take the exam, boom, you got the license, and you just fill out the form, pay $100, you got the license here. Okay? So I can tell y'all that now, I already got your money. So, but you're doing it the right way. And I appreciate that. I know right now you're doing it the only way you thought you could do it, but I do appreciate that you all are being put through the ringer of it. I really do. Okay? Everybody good with this rule? All right? That is the rule. All right. So let's do this. Let's take. Okay, go ahead.
So with this new law, and like we were just saying, it's scary because they don't know the law, so they can do a lot of things wrong and get chastised for it.
Well, and that's the other reason I'm opposed to it, because I think it sets up for a lot more disciplinary cases, because I think there's going to be a lot more people. And here's the thing, what I said from the beginning was, I think this is a bad idea, number one. Number two, if you're going to do this, they ought to have like some scarlet letter attached to them somehow, so that a broker in charge knows that this person never took a class in North Carolina, never took a test in North Carolina. Because think about it, how unfair is that to the broker in charge? Because they're going to look at you and that broker as the same person because they're just going to both have provisional broker on their license. Whereas the difference is, you guys know North Carolina's laws and rules. That person has no earthly idea about North Carolina's laws and rules. I think it's unfair to the broker in charge, because now they got some yahoo out there who don't know what they're doing, and they're responsible for them. And they don't have any way of knowing. Well, that's the thing. You don't have any way of knowing, short of like bluntly asking them, how'd you get your license? You know, like, did you come from another state? And, you know. No, I don't ask that now because it's never been a requirement, right?
That's online, so look it up.
I mean, I have to have all my staff, I have to have a copy of their nursing license.
But see, if I go look it up, it's going to look exactly the same. It's just going to say provisional broker and date issued. That's it.
You keep comparing it to nursing.
Because I have a license.
No, I know
Yes,
that, I know you do. I know, but this ain't nothing like it.
No, because it's going to be a North Carolina license.
I know, but it's
It's going to be a North Carolina license.
your nursing,
It'll look just like yours.
but it's not like it.
Yeah, right, it is. It's scary. It scares me.
No, but the active date's different.
No, because it's just going to show a license issuance date. It's just going to say the license was issued on this date, provisional broker. So for all you know, that's the person who just finished the class and just got the license. Whereas it's somebody who came from another state, paid $100, and now here they are. Yep.
If they're provisional broker, they still can't work in this state without having supervision from the bank.
Right, but that's who I'm saying is the most dangerous for, is the BIC who's taking this person on and not knowing what they got on their hands. Because they're going to view that person as a provisional broker who they assume is somebody who just got done taking the class and knows a little something about North Carolina law.
So you don't want a provisional to be in work, you gotta hold their hand the whole way.
Well, right. Yeah. So let's do this. Let's take a quick break. Come back at 9:20 and we will continue on with this Chapter 8 section, okay?
Wait, I hope
Before I started going through the ringer.
You do?
Yeah, trust me.
You do.